Good afternoon to you. Mark Sott of HurricaneTrack.com here with your hurricane outlook and discussion. It is Friday, the second day of October 2020. We got a lot to talk about. TD number 25 out there, another system in the Eastern Caribbean that we need to watch closely. And, of course, we have powerful Hurricane Marie in the Eastern Pacific that's not going to really bother anybody directly. So let's get right to it, shall we? Take a look at what's going on out there. We'll start with the National Hurricane Center. And we see the Eastern Pacific. There's Hurricane Marie, 948 millibars for the pressure. The wind around 130 miles per hour. That's, of course, satellite estimated. And it's forecast to stay away from land areas, moving on out into the open Pacific further. But it could create some swells that come up towards the coast of the Baja and mainland Mexico. So any of you surfers out there, you might have some higher waves and swells to get your surfboards ready for it. That'd be nice, right? Just be careful out there. Some of those waves can be pretty big. Tropical cyclones can generate some pretty sizable wave action. Just be mindful of that if you're taking the longboard out there to enjoy those waves along the Mexican coastline. In the meantime, in the Northwest Caribbean Sea, we do have TD number 25 and the 2 o'clock Eastern Time advisory, the intermediate advisory, still 35 mile per hour winds. We'll take a close look at this and all of the structure and everything associated with it, including its track, in just a moment. Then we have this other system. This is the one that the GFS was really honing in on the other night, the 0Z run Wednesday into Thursday that had a lot of people talking. That's this system, and it's starting to get a little bit more energized, 40% chance of further development over the next few days. Looking at the tracking map, this map comes from our HurricaneTrack Insider, part of the benefits that you get if you're one of our crowdfunding supporters via Patreon. And we see Marie over here, Category 4, moving on out into the Pacific even further, so no cause for concern with that system. We can zoom in here, take a look at what's going on with our depression. And like I said, we showed you the intermediate advisory. Moving northwest at 8,005 millibars, 1005 millibars on the pressure, forecast to become a storm. Over the next 24 hours or so, it would be Tropical Storm Gamma, assuming that it does so. Peaking out, according to the National Hurricane Center here, at 45 miles per hour before landfall on the northeast tip of the Yucatan. So Cancun, Cozumel, that vicinity, definitely some squally weather, and that actually goes down into Belize. I'll show you that in a moment on the satellite animation. But I'm going to tell you, we know that these systems can definitely ramp up, and I think the key to this getting stronger than the Hurricane Center is indicating will be whether or not it develops an inner core before it reaches land, and it's only got about 36 hours to do so. I suspect that it'll be stronger than 45 miles per hour just based on past situations, the pretty solid organization of it. I think the one limiting factor is it is a pretty large circulation envelope, and I'll show you that as we go forward. All right, so here's the big picture. We have Marie, again, out here in the Eastern Pacific, a very fine specimen of a hurricane, not bothering anybody, so that's good. And then here's our depression. And again, it's a very large system. Huge bands rotating around this, covering a pretty big area. And it's just going to have to focus. It's got very, very warm upper ocean heat content waters to work with. High upper ocean heat content. The limiting factors are, again, the size of it. And up north here is this frontal boundary. And behind that boundary, all in this area through here, large area of dry continental air. That northwest flow coming down out of Canada, reinforcing that. Very cool here in the south. I went on a walk this morning with my wife around the neighborhood, and I enjoyed the walk, but I didn't like the cool air. Nope, not a fan of fall at all. That's just me. I like either convective, warm, hot weather, humidity, thunderstorms, beach weather, or cold and snow and storminess. I don't know, it's just interesting to me, but anyhow, that cool, dry air, not a good thing if you're a tropical cyclone. And it's just going to really depend on how quickly this gets together. And we'll look at a satellite, zoomed-in satellite shot in just a moment. But it definitely has some things going for it at the moment, as we say. And I think the main limiting factor in the short term is the size, and again, how quickly it can organize an inner core. Down here over the Eastern Caribbean, again, that's the system that the GFS was picking up on the other day, that 0Z run where it came over here, developed across Cuba, went up and kind of like this and milled around and looked like it was going to try to come back. You remember that? That infamous run that we all looked at and said, no, it can't be. That would have made 2020 just like close the doors, shut the lights off, forget it, it's all over. And, that was a pretty wild run, but it was showing us, like I mentioned, kind of the potential here if certain things happen. It wasn't just completely far-fetched. It's a pretty wild run, admittedly, but there it is today, and it's starting to get a little bit more energized. Hurricane Center upping the probabilities of development to 40%. And again, we'll examine this closer with zoomed-in satellite views and the model runs, etc. First, precipitable water values, very dry in the blues and purples all through here. Very moist in the Caribbean. Tropical wave moving in there. That's the system we just talked about. And then a very high amplitude tropical wave out over the Atlantic. Let's draw it in black there so it stands out a little better. That's a big old piece of energy that we're going to have to watch, because it too is going to eventually pile in. Maybe a piece of it breaks off and comes up here. I don't know. We'll have to see as things progress, but lots of energy out over the Atlantic, and then there's more. You can see this. You can see just a little bit of turning, ever so slight turning, with another piece of energy over Africa, and it's only October 2nd. We're going to have a very busy month, I do believe. Hey, one thing I want to point out. I think that this vorticity thing, fingerprint, thank you, the DNA, whatever. This fingerprint, so to speak, of vorticity is Paulette, the remnants of Paulette. I do believe. I could be wrong, but I do think that's what that is. Believe it or not, after all this time, the remnants of Paulette sitting out there. This is that high amplitude wave I was showing you. There's the system in the Eastern Caribbean. Here's our tropical depression. And it's really neat to be able to see the outline, should outline it where you can see it, of the trough here in the front in the vorticity pattern. And here's more colder air coming down out of Canada, that northwest flow coming in. Once we get to the winter months, these big troughs could equal some winter storms. But not now. Now it's fall, and we still have hurricanes to deal with. All right, so a close-up satellite view, and this is really helping to sort of make my point further that TD25, pretty well organized overall, but it's got a little bit of work to do to get that inner core going. And we can look at the structure here, center of circulation somewhere in here, large feeder bands extending well out away from the center, and even over here in Belize, there's Belize down there, eastern side of the Yucatan, far away from the center, you're going to get some rain squalls from this, and some of those rains, as you know, can be very heavy. Even the northern coast of Honduras down there in the Gulf of Honduras, there's one little lightning speck right there. So some of these thunderstorms, this upward motion down here, you can see it kind of percolating. They definitely mean business, and that can drop some heavy rain, gusty winds. So if you are running or are participating in a tour operation down there where you're visiting the reefs, you're out looking at the beautiful Caribbean Sea, etc., keep this in mind. It does not take a hurricane or a named storm to cause problems. These thunderstorms, this developing tropical cyclone, this is the way I look at it. Anything bigger than us is enough to cause problems, right? And this is certainly bigger than any of us. Very large weather feature, a depression in the atmosphere where the air pressure is lowering. That's why we call it that. And it's causing tropical storm force winds in some of those bands. It's just got to get itself better organized, and then it'll get a name. And that name, of course, will be Gamma. And we talked about the track. Generally speaking, going to move up here towards the northeast tip of the Yucatan, and then probably get blocked and then turn back towards the Bay of Campeche over here in the next few days. Not 100% sure, right? You know how the weather can be. But that seems to be the general idea as of now. In the meantime, in the Eastern Caribbean, we have our slowly developing system here, and it's interacting with what we call this PV streamer, and that's creating this wind shear through here. Jack Sillen talked about what these PV streamers are on one of the updates that we did about Isaias. I can't remember exactly what date that was, but basically there's some negative upper level, mid to upper level energy kind of pinched off through here, and that's creating this strong southwesterly flow. But down to the south, not so much of that going on, and there's just a little bit of a hint of rotation. And, you know, if you want to verify it, we can go look at the vorticity chart, and let's zoom in on that to the Caribbean, and sure enough, there it is. And in fact, it's pretty round in its appearance. So, you know, we'll have to see. Maybe this is the beginning of something we really, really have to watch. It's got a lot of work to do, and it's got to get away from this negative influence that's going on up this way. But I think as it moves across the Caribbean, water temperatures, you know, no problem there. We'll see. The models are starting to indicate, especially the GFS, more development with this system. So, speaking of the models, let's take a look at this. And just to set the stage for you, we're going to look at the GFS, the Global Forecast System. For the bigger picture, for both of these features, TD25 and the other system moving across the Caribbean. And then I'm going to look at the HWRF, the Hurricane Weather Research Forecast Model for TD25 specifically. All right, so just making sure you know what's what. And this is the 12Z run today. See it right there, 12Z, October 2nd. Cyclonic vorticity. All of this that we see through here, this is the signature of TD25. There's the signature of our system in the Eastern Caribbean. There's the front right through there. And let's put this into motion, frame by frame, see what we get. 24 hours out, this would be valid 8 a.m. in the morning tomorrow, Saturday. And yeah, the GFS definitely strengthens and organizes TD25 just to the south of Cozumel, and it finally makes landfall in the vicinity of the northeast Yucatan by 36 hours. And then it's over the extreme southern Gulf as probably a pretty decent tropical storm at this point at 48 hours out Sunday morning. And you notice too, look at what's happening with our other system here south of Hispaniola right there. That's trying to get better organized and focus the energy a little bit better. And we'll see. You know, we're talking 48 hours from now. Let's go on out to 72 right there. Now, you might be asking yourselves, why isn't, for example, what would presumably be gamma just to the north of the Yucatan there, why isn't it following this path here and heading up towards Florida? Not that anybody is saying, come on to Florida, we want you here. But, you know, that's a great question. Why isn't it doing that? Generally speaking, what's happening, even though you've got this washed out front, the weakness in the atmosphere is filling in. And so the pressures are building to the north of the depression or the would-be storm down here. The pressures are starting to rise in here. The trough dug in, the pressure is lowered, and if that stayed, this system could just lift on up to the north and northeast, which is climatologically what they usually do. But in this case, that bus has left the bus station, so to speak. And this guy, or whatever, gamma, missed the bus. That's what it comes down to. And so the pressure is going to start to rise up here, and then this gets left behind. And as pressures rise even more over time, that's 72 hours, you go out to 96, you see what happens. And there's the ridging starting to build back in. You can see a height line right there, and that might be, by the way, the leftovers of Paulette, believe it or not. So the ridging builds back in, the pressure's building to the north of the system, and it just can't go into that. Doesn't work that way. So it's shoved over here more to the west. Basically, that's the gist of it. And you also notice, get rid of me so we can focus on this, our little area right here, and let's go back to the 48-hour mark. That'll help us. Starting at 48 hours, the system coming out of the Caribbean tries to organize there between Haiti and Jamaica. GFS says by day 4, it's landfalling over southeast Cuba. And then by day 5, maybe whatever's left of it is sitting over Miami, Biscayne Bay and vicinity. We'll have to see. And then there comes that high amplitude wave down there. That might be Paulette's Bones. But this is interesting because that's 5 days out, and we know how awful, really, truly awful the models have been this year and anticipating these systems. I don't know what the problem is, but you remember Sally? You know, it was on again, off again, on again, and then bam, it made landfall as a Cat 2. You know, like in the last 8 hours, really ramped up. Now, every storm is different, and we're in a different month, and we're at a different time of the year, but wow, things are changing again. So that takes us out to 5 days. No reason to really look beyond that. Let's just go back and look at it from the beginning so you can kind of get an idea of how things evolve. There's our depression. It moves up. The other system comes up across Cuba. But the weird thing about this, that's a large area of energy right through here. I don't believe that. I think this either doesn't develop at all, or it's stronger and maybe farther west. I don't know. That's just my hunch. We shall see what we shall see. Now, looking at the H-Wharf specifically for TD25, and I know it's hard to figure out what's what. You can tell the banding. Just to give you an idea of geography, there's Cozumel, right? And there's the northeast tip of the Yucatan over there, parts of the Yucatan, and then you get further down, and that would be Belize. So this is the initial from the 12Z run of the H-Wharf today. It moves along, pressure deepens, it gets better organized, and sure enough, lo and behold, it goes down into the low 980s there and becomes a hurricane real close to the Cancun area by about 30 hours or so. So we're talking basically tomorrow afternoon. And then it continues to deepen, gets up into the Gulf of Mexico, and that's 48 hours out. And it looks like it's going to try to hook up with that trough, but it doesn't do so. And it starts to weaken, dry air, shear, etc., really take its toll. And as we're going out into time, it just kind of fades out. Interesting to say the least. Negative conditions probably across that area. So, a lot going on for just the second day of October, and that's just in the world of weather. And you know what I mean by that? I mean, holy mackerel. And I don't laugh. I mean, sometimes you just have to go, ha ha ha, wow. I don't know what else to do. But this is the world of weather. That's what we're going to stick to. And yes, it's very busy, and no laughing matter. I mean, we do have some serious stuff to keep track of. And again, I mean, the main emphasis with TD25, soon to be Tropical Storm Gamma in all likelihood. Again, you guys down there, especially with boating interests, and any tourists down there, take it very seriously, all right? Those squalls can produce gusty winds, and those can knock those boats over. You get some bigger waves, etc., that can be a big problem. And the bottom line is I want you to stay safe, because without you watching from your side of whatever device you happen to be watching from, without you, there's no reason for there to be me. It's that simple. All right, have you guys a great weekend ahead. As always, thanks for tuning in. I do appreciate it. Thanks to our patrons via Patreon for supporting this. If you're interested in joining that, it's patreon.com/HurricaneTrack. The link in the description of this and pretty much every video, at least the last year or so. And that's how you do that. Also, help to make this video more popular, I guess they say, by liking it. If you like it. If you don't like it, I guess you could hit the don't like button or the dislike, but don't do that. But apparently it helps make these recommended more, the more likes you get. I just feel weird asking about that, but it's not for my ego. It's to try to grow what we're doing. All right, I'm out of here. Thanks as always for watching. I do appreciate it more than you know. Again, have a great weekend ahead. I am Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com. I'll talk to you again tomorrow.